Greetings, the cows, Gus T Renegade in for another program to share constructive information about what racism is and how it works. I hope the broadcasts have been constructive. Try to say it as often as possible. I do not want non-white people wasting their time. If you do not find the program constructive, if you're not getting helpful information, please invest your time and energy in something else, supporting someone else's work, coming up with your own project. But please, just do not waste your time. Non-white people, I want us to be as efficient and productive as possible. We want to hop right to it. Guest for today's program, I have to give appreciation to Sister Nefertari with Children of Southampton in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She was on the program in April, and real excellent broadcast, and I love her effort out there in Pennsylvania. She had our guest for today's program. She had him speak with her audience in Philadelphia, and she raved about his work. Actually, I was looking at her presentation. It's just like, wow, I need to get this guy on our program. The gentleman who is a guest with us today, in addition to being the executive director of the Sankore Institute, he also is an assistant professor of science and education at the Indiana University. His focus is on the underrepresentation of African Americans in science and science-related careers. He has, extremely active. This is a phenomenal example about being efficient and productive. He focuses a lot on how African Americans, their different components as to why we're underrepresented in science, technology, engineering, mathematics related fields. Racism having a lot to do with that, of course, but also African Americans, black people, not being really informed about those fields, not knowing all of the information and how they can use that technology to improve their lives, their community, and they work to try to correct that. Real privilege to have him on the program. He also, one of the better articles that I read, he talked about how you cannot divorce culture from examining the science and technology that a people in a particular culture produce. And I definitely want to ask him more about that and what that means for the science and technology that white people produce. At any rate, again, our guest for today's program, real privilege to have him here, Dr. Jomo W. Mutegi. Dr. Mutegi, are you with us, sir?
Yes, Brother Gus.
Outstanding. I want to make sure, am I pronouncing your name correctly? Jomo W. Mutegi?
No, actually, brother, this is Jomo with a hard J.
Jomo.
Yes.
Jomo, got you. Jomo W. Mutegi. Am I saying it correctly?
Yes, sir.
Outstanding, outstanding. And the institute, am I pronouncing that correctly? Is it Sankore Institute?
Sankore, yes.
Sankore, okay. Sankore Institute, outstanding. Please, you have so much on your resume. Can you give us a brief synopsis just of what you do and why you do this work?
Sure. And like many of our warrior scholars, I guess I have two jobs. My incognito job is that I am an associate professor at Indiana University, and I do research on African American students' science performance. I look specifically at what influences students to pursue science careers, but I also look at what types of experiences should we provide African American students so that they can not only be prosperous in studying science, but be prosperous in life in general. And then the other part of what I do, which grows out of my commitment to racial progress and black liberation, African liberation, is to use my position and whatever doors are open to me to help to re-Africanize our people and to improve our condition. And I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm not that innovative, but I looked at history and I've seen movements that work. Garvey's movement works. Elijah Muhammad's movement works. And they laid out for us what we need to do, and that is move towards self-determination. So wherever possible, I contribute to the establishment of African-centered organizations. And if necessary or when necessary, I try to help build African-centered organizations.
Outstanding. It seems you have done that with the Sankore Institute. I want to hop right into the materials. I said you have a great illustration of non-white people being active and efficient on the program with us today. Number one, you are a black male for folks who have not seen you. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. This program, the C.O.W.S, Context of White Supremacy, I have unfortunately concluded that we are in a global system of racism, white supremacy, and the definition that I use for both racism and white supremacy is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you believe that such a system exists, and do you think that definition is accurate?
Well, I would say yes for the most part. I haven't really thought about it in that way, that deeply. There's no question that, as one brother with Positive Kinetic Visions often says, we have more of everything that's bad and less of everything that's good. Garvey said when he went all across the world, whenever you saw whites and blacks in close proximity, the whites were dominating the blacks. So that's not an accident of history. And, you know, we sometimes split hairs about whether and to what degree whites intended to be the case. It doesn't matter to me. You know, if you shoot me by accident or shoot me on purpose, I'm just a shot. So I don't know how intentioned it is, but I do know that it puts us where we are and that we need to fight against it.
Right on. I think the first thing I would like to start with, you have published a number of articles in all sorts of scholarly journals. I was reading your work preparing for the program, and you talked about how if you're going to look at science and technology that a people produce, you can't divorce that from the culture that that group of people forms, the culture that group of people exists in. Can you talk about that, and I guess what that means for all this science and technology that is produced by white people?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things our miseducation really leads us astray, and so part of our miseducation gives us the idea that mathematics and science, to some degree engineering and technology, are independent of the people that produce them. I've often had conversations where I'm trying to illustrate to someone the importance of having African American scientists and having an infrastructure for African American science. The response is usually, I don't understand what race has to do with science. It's just science. Or, I don't know what race has to do with math. It's just math. These disciplines don't come out of the sky handed down by God. These are disciplines by which people engage in a study of the world around them. And so you can't separate the people who are doing the study from what they produce. So if we want to go out and study a tree, and say 6 of us go out and study the tree, we're going to walk away with 6 different understandings of tree. And those understandings we walk away with reflect something of ourselves. So the same idea applies to cultures. All human cultures throughout history have studied nature. And that's what science is a study of nature. If humans don't study nature, we don't live in the natural world very long. We die. So that is proof enough that we study nature. Now the question is, how does the study of nature differ from one group of people to the next? And in terms of European science, which we are given through our miseducation as the standard or the only way of studying nature, it stands in such a marked difference from the way any other group of people has studied it. It makes it very difficult to conclude that these people are operating on the same set of principles or the same ethos that the rest of humankind operates on. I'll give you just a couple of examples. You know, archaeologists say they go digging in the area, they find a lot of bronze artifacts, they say this must have been the Bronze Age. They'll go digging in a different area, maybe a little bit deeper, and they'll find artifacts that's mostly stone. They say this must have been the Stone Age. These people lived mostly by manufacturing and working with stone. What do you think people 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 years from now will think of the age we live in now? They're going to call it the garbage age because we produce more garbage than humankind has ever produced in the history of the planet. No other race of people has ever done that. No other race of people has said, hey, let's put water in bottles that don't go anywhere. That would just be bottles for the rest of eternity. That's a fundamentally different way of interacting with nature. No other group of people on the planet has ever created a bomb that could destroy the planet, or destroy all life on the planet. Not that they're not capable of doing it, but they don't have the mindset to do it. So my point is that we have to look at the practitioner, the person who does the studying, in order to understand fully the thing that they produce in their study.
So, as a scientist, your observation of the science that is produced by white people, Europeans, your conclusion would be that we're producing a lot of garbage and destructive technology. Would that be correct?
Well, without question, we're producing a lot of garbage and a lot of destructive technology. But I think what's most critical is what I would point to is that their way of interacting with nature is unnatural. So one way that I frame it in my work is to say that one way we can understand Western modern science, which is what we call the science Europeans produce, is that they have an anti-nature nature. The core of their essence is to work against nature. I don't say that as an insult, but that's really the most objective way of understanding some of the things that they produce. I was reading recently, and I'm actually putting together an article on this one development, but they're working to produce what they call schmeat. That's a blending of two words, sheet and meat. So they produce meat in a laboratory, in a vat, really, and then they roll it out on sheets. And their biggest challenge at this point is to give that meat, that schmeat, the texture of real meat. Now, this sounds so bizarre to most people. When I share it with others, the first question I get is, why would you do that? Why would you want to produce meat in a laboratory, in a vat, and roll it out on sheets? And all I can say is, I don't know. Whoever's doing it is working against nature, because nature has given us the perfect formula for production of meat. That's what I mean when I say an anti-nature nature.
Wow. So you think things like cloning, whether it's other animals or people, cloning organisms, that would be another example of the anti-nature nature of Europeans, white people?
Absolutely. No other. Now, when I say now cloning, and someone may try to trick us on this, because cloning in the strictest sense is not necessarily negative. And other cultures have done forms of cloning. But European science has taken it to a point of absurdity where they're actually trying to recreate an entire organism. So you have a cow, you like this cow produces has very good meat, very good marbling in its meat. You say, you know what? You say you call the cow Jimmy. Jimmy produced some of the best meat I've ever had. I want another Jimmy. So you go in and take Jimmy's DNA and you produce another Jimmy. That's a very extreme form of cloning. It's not, taking a cutting from one tree and putting it on another tree so that you can have seedless fruit, which is a more natural method of cloning, to get seedless oranges, for example. Or to take two breeds of corn and you want to get the best traits and put those two breeds in close proximity so that they cross-pollinate. That could be considered another form of cloning. But it's more natural. It goes in line with or in harmony with what nature provides us. The type of cloning that the Europeans are giving us is running counter to what nature provides us. So there are instances now where they'll take certain cuts of DNA from pigs and put it in plants. That's very unnatural. Pig DNA should be nowhere near plant DNA. Nature provides no mechanism by which pig DNA would be in plant DNA. That's unnatural.
I want to try and push back on this, right? So I'm playing so-called devil's advocate, but the pig and the plant thing is kind of tough. I'll have to hop over that. Okay, so what about the folks who, if I go back to Jimmy, who would say, okay, there's nothing incorrect or unnatural about trying to get another Jimmy. We have shortages of food. We got people starving all over the planet. If we can clone, 1,000 Jimmys, we can have food, we can feed everybody, and we won't have starvation. That would be great. There's nothing incorrect about that at all. It's solving problems. What would your response be?
Well, that's good, and it's good because what you've done is you've predicted the counter argument. With all of these advancements, they give you the benefits, right? Even with sheep meat, this will help to solve world hunger. Well, what I would encourage you to do is to stop and step back for a minute and say, well, why do we have world hunger in the first place? And now we kind of step outside of the realm of science a little bit, right? So if you don't have European meddling in other people's affairs, if you don't have European destruction of the environment, then we don't really have world hunger in the way that we do now. More importantly, these developments are not really designed, or I want to say, they're not suited to solving the problems they say they're going to solve. The amount of money it costs to clone an animal is so cost prohibitive. Even those who advocate cloning would never try to clone or to sell for meat the animal they clone. They will only use that animal to reproduce other animals. So if you can reproduce for meat a cloned animal, why can't you just reproduce for meat a natural animal? If you have the infrastructure to build a laboratory in which you're going to grow meat, isn't that more expensive than the infrastructure it takes to grow to have a field where cows can graze? Of course, it's less expensive. So these arguments they give you are logical fallacies, and we need to see them for what they are.
Has the FDA approved of allowing cloned material to enter the marketplace? Is that available now to the public? Anything that has been cloned?
Yes, I won't say anything. They have approved cloned cows for milk and meat production, and that was as of January 2009. What's real insidious about it is that they've prohibited manufacturers from indicating that the meat you're consuming comes from cloned animals. Now, I'm not saying that they're prohibiting them from telling you that it's cloned. So if you make a cloned animal and you want to tell people, you are not allowed to. The reason for that is that they know that consumers across the board do not want to eat no cloned animals because we don't know what it is or what it's going to do to us. So they're going to make you eat it.
Wow. Wow. Are there any steps, I guess? You seem like you have some real concerns about this. Are there any steps that you can take to try to protect yourself from this?
This is what makes our situation where science is concerned very, very dangerous. Racism white supremacy is attacking us on all fronts. So, and Neely Fuller told us, economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war. But some areas are easier for us to combat than others. Entertainment is probably one of the easiest for us to combat, right? So they bombard us with negative images. We can turn off our TV. We can turn off our radio. We can withhold our dollar. We can really kill Hollywood overnight just by withholding our dollar. I don't know that Hollywood could survive without the black dollar. But in this instance, it's much more difficult because their tampering with the natural world is so pervasive, it gets to a point where you need a substantial infrastructure to counteract what they're doing. What would it really take if we say, you know what, they're destroying the Gulf by spilling oil. Let's go clean up the Gulf. It's not a matter of just withholding or withdrawing from it. You can't withdraw from the planet. So they're producing clone animals, and you don't know which ones are clone and which ones are normal animals. How do you withdraw? They're creating seeds that are blended with DNA from different organisms, and those seeds produce fruit that sometimes reproduce those same seeds with that same tainted DNA. How do we know which seeds are tainted? We don't know that. You can't withdraw from that. So this is an area where it's imperative that we have, I don't want to sound trite. When I say we need more black scientists, a lot of our Negro countrymen who believe in integration and want to have the illusion of inclusion say we need more black scientists so that the numbers are equal. That's not what I'm saying. We need African scientists who are African-minded, who place Africa and African issues first and foremost, to be on guard and help build an infrastructure by which we can counter and defend ourselves against what whites are bringing to us. But at the end of the day, we've got to give some serious and mature thought to how to deal with this behavior. We share the planet, and if we can't share the planet in a mutually agreeable way, then some people can't partake in what the planet has to offer.
Just from your observation and your studies, have you seen any evidence that white people, a significant number of white people, have the same concerns that you do about the cloning of animals and this tampering with nature, this unnatural nature that they have exhibited? Do you see any evidence that a significant number of white people have the same concerns and are saying, hey, we want to stop this, we want to go in a different direction?
I'll say this. Absolutely no question. In fact, most of the information I get comes from white people. So the best resource for learning how Europeans are destroying the food system is from Europeans. Michael Pollan, who wrote The Omnivore's Dilemma, In Defense of Food. Eric Schlesser is one writer. I think he did Fast Food Nation. The documentary Food Inc. is another source. Without question, there are Europeans who see this as a problem. So I don't even go so far as to say, I try not to, in my writing, suggest that all Europeans are in harmonious agreement on, I don't think they're in a room saying, hey, let's destroy the planet. I don't know that that's how their psyche works. But again, I'll go back to my earlier statement. At the end of the day, whether you sit down and intend to do it or whether you do it by accident, it doesn't matter because the outcome is the same, right? So, yeah, you have Pollan and you have Schlesser and you have these others who are fighting against it. But if you're not fighting hard enough, somebody else has to join the fight. If your fight isn't leading us in the right direction, somebody has to come along and fight a little differently. So this is a fight for me as a responsible African that I engage in because it's what will ensure us a progeny. Will it ensure whites a progeny also? Perhaps. That's not my issue, though. My issue is, how are we going to survive on the planet that God gave us? We are the seed people for planet Earth. I believe that God put us here on this planet first for a purpose. I believe he made us great for a purpose. It's our responsibility. So this is not something that we do just because we're nice people. This is our responsibility. I believe that the animals look at us and they want to cuss us out because we're letting whites destroy them and the planet that we all share. You got a cow hooked up to a milking machine 24 hours a day. I'm pretty sure you walk by and the cow's like, look, brother, would you do something? Would you stop this guy? This is not right. And you walk by and you don't do nothing. That's a problem.
Again, privilege to have our guest today, Executive Director of the Sankore Institute in Indiana, Dr. Jomo W. Mutegi. You talked about, and I think that, unless I've been misinformed, creating more black scholars, more black scientists, and scientists are scholars, African scientists who have a mindset to help black people and help correct these problems. That's one of the fundamental goals of the Sankore Institute. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. In reading your material, you talked about some of the barriers, problems that keep black people from pursuing science, mathematics, engineering, technology, from pursuing these fields. Racism, yes, of course, that's one. Can you talk about some of the other problems that keep black people from pursuing these fields?
Well, there's, and this is, where you began talking about the system earlier in the show. But there's so many things working against our attainment in these fields. One way to think about it is to look at the interactions that it takes for a person to go from being an aspirant to being a practitioner, right? So you have a kid who may be in 5th, 6th grade, and he wants to, at the age of 24, 25, be a practicing scientist. There's a lot of interactions he's going to have along the way. He's going to interact with teachers. He's going to submit an application to a university, and that really is an interaction with admissions counselors. If he gets to the university, he's going to have college coursework. He's going to need an internship. He's going to need someone to write letters of recommendation for him. He's going to need someone to invite him onto a research project. He's going to need someone to teach him how to publish. He's going to need someone to make introductions for him. So what's happening in the academic field that I write in, for years, everyone has acted as though, or approached this problem as though, black students just choose not to become scientists. And my response is, well, it's not simply a choice, because you may choose to, but if you don't have others who advocate on your behalf at these different interaction points, that choice is for naught. So one way to look at, when you ask of the myriad problems that work against us, one is to look at these interactions. Here's a question. Are the interactions that black aspirants have of the same quality and scope as those that white aspirants have? And the obvious answer to that question is no. I don't need to collect no data to know the answer to that is no. Okay. Now, another area we can look, in addition to these interactions, is the structures, right? So I had a student who was a very bright guy, top-notch mathematician from Philadelphia. He grew up in Coatesville, actually, so it was an inner-city area, just outside of Philly. I said inner city, outside of the city, but you know what I mean. Project-type area, right, just outside of Philly.
Yes, sir.
And so he's in school, and he's doing this coursework, and he says to me, look, when we get an assignment, I have to work twice as hard as my peers. I say, why do you say that? He said, well, the instructor will say, use software program X. Everybody else already has a software program. Everybody knows how to use it. He said, not only do I have to learn how to use the software program and learn what it is, then I have to do my assignment. So they come with what we call a cultural capital and a social capital that works to their advantage. So an instructor assumes you have a base of knowledge and access to things that many of our students don't have. With that, many students from these white families who our students compete against, they're in families whose parents are scientists and engineers, mathematicians, or their family friends are scientists, mathematicians, and engineers. Whereas, like the guy I was telling you about, he said to me one day, he said, "Look, my people are not even white-collar workers. We janitors, you know." So I don't sit down at dinner across the table from an engineer from MIT to learn the inner workings of the engineering field. That's not my experience, you know. So that's another factor that works against us. Go ahead. I'm sorry, brother.
What would you? Oh, no problem. What would you say for folks who would counter that and say, well, you know, hey, every white person is not going home to a dad who's, you know, a faculty member at MIT and a mom who, you know, is an Ivy League professor and has been for 20 years. You know, you're overgeneralizing what the white students have at home.
Not at all. I'll say do a survey. Do a survey, and I don't have to. I say do a survey, but there's already data that shows this. There are certain things that correlate with scientific career major choice, right? And one of those things is the influence of peers and significant others, so that those who major in these fields are more likely to have had experiences with people who are expert in these fields already.
Wow. So just having contact with other folks who are in these fields in some capacity, that has a great impact on whether or not you choose to go into these fields.
No question whatsoever. You know, think about this.
Wow.
So we've all had some degree of schooling. How many times in school, and now I have more education than the average person, and it's in science fields, right? So I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry and a bachelor's degree in biology and a doctorate degree in science education. I've never had a class that taught me how to be a scientist. We don't do that in schools, so where do you learn it from? You learn it vicariously and through those experiences you have outside of school. So when you ask our youth, what do you want to be when you grow up, they'll tell you things that they know and that they're familiar with. That's why we hear athlete, rapper. Those are visible things that they see. It was a time when they would say doctor, lawyer, when we had doctors and lawyers in the neighborhood, you know. How can they say, I want to be a Research 3 scientist for Bar Harbor? They don't know what Bar Harbor is. They don't know what a Research 3 scientist is. So it's not really an option to you if you don't even know that this thing exists.
Wow. I've read you have essays that talk about this problem specifically, and you talk about how just having one day or once a month even, where black students they get to go out in the field and work with folks, visit their job, see what they do in a daily work day. That is not enough to really give them a rich understanding of what a typical work day would be like, what you can expect, just all the things that would help you along that path of becoming a scientist. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. I mean, we do those kind of things, and I don't want to seem too negative by saying that they're horrible. And horrible may be a little bit strong, but the reason I say they're horrible is because they leave us the impression that we've done something, but really they often, not that they're less effective, they make us take steps back as opposed to taking steps forward. So, you know, you can't have a one-day field excursion and think you get a sense of what engineers do. So I'm just giving a scenario. I work at Eli Lilly, and I'm the human resources PR person. We want to have the youth from the local high school come in, and so I go and talk to 5 or 6 scientists and say, okay, we're going to have a group of kids. There's going to be 30. They're coming into our facility next week, so we want to be prepared and want to give them a little overview of what we do. Already you've corrupted the whole scenario, because what you get is not going to be authentic. It's going to be scripted. You can't mob through a place with a research lab or a setting with 30 kids and get a sense of what really happens in there. It's ludicrous. So what I've argued is more effective is to have it's what we have done historically as African people, and that is just to be more intentional about building relationships. We use the metaphor of the village, but there was a time for us when the village was literal. So it shouldn't matter if I am a physician or not. There should be a physician in my village, and every child in my village should have access to the village physician. Not just access to go, when something's wrong, but have dinner sometimes with the physician. Have, if you go to church, have church service or worship with the physician, or see them out in the neighborhood when you're doing neighborhood and community things. And those students who are intrigued by the physician and what he does then have many occasions to talk with him, to get to see how he lives, what kind of people he interacts with. When the physician invites people over, the kids are around so they can kind of see other physicians, his peers. And we need to foster amongst ourselves that communal sense of living if we're going to help our young people to get a rich insight as to how a wide range of professionals function. And that's important whether we're looking at professionals or non-professionals. You get as much insight from seeing a non-professional function as you do from seeing a professional function.
Wow. I read, and this directly ties into what we've been discussing, I read one of your articles, and then there were none. And okay. You conducted some interviews with black college students who were pursuing science, or at least they were pursuing science careers initially. And it looks like at least two of them in the study, they changed their mind along that process. And you talked about, I guess, some of the pitfalls that we've really just been discussing as to why these folks decided not to continue along the path of pursuing a science or technology-related field.
Right.
If you can kind of share some of the findings that you got from that study, that would be great.
Okay, I'll do that. And I just want to also mention, because you're referencing some of these articles, if others are interested, one place you can go online to get access to some of these writings is our website, and that is www.sankoreinstitute.org, SANKORE institute.org. That's probably the best source. What we do is periodically, maybe once every quarter, once every 6 months or so, we try to prepare an article that's easily accessible by lay people, people who don't have a background in science. But we want to communicate some new scientific advancement and what it means for us as African people. And so we write up these articles and we put them on our website, and we also send it out to those who are on our email list. And also we'll summarize findings from research that are pertinent to African Americans. And our audience for those articles is community people, educators, parents, those who have interaction and work with young people, so that we can begin to think about ways we can do our work differently that's going to give our youth a better chance. So now the question that you asked is, what are some of the findings of that study? There's, I would say, three main findings, three big categories of findings. And the first one we kind of alluded to, but this gives me a chance to explain it in more detail. So we want to understand what is it that makes a student interested in a science career initially. One thing we found from the study was that it's extremely arbitrary. Young people don't typically sit down, have a list of career options, and do a pro and con list for each career option and pick one. That's not how they arrive at the decisions. What we found is that usually it's a suggestion from a parent or a teacher, someone who's in that child's social circle, and they're usually affirmed by that person. And so the one young man, the one I told you about earlier, he had never considered a career in engineering until one teacher came to him and said, "Look, you're very good in mathematics. You would be a very good engineer. You have to apply to college." His response was, "Oh, I didn't know that. Engineers must need good mathematics knowledge. I know I was pretty decent in math, but I didn't know I was good enough to be an engineer. Okay, I'll consider that." Now he's on the path to pursuing an engineering career. It's so extremely simple. It's a shame that we don't do it more. I was traveling a couple weeks back, and my son was with me. We got onto a shuttle, and an airline pilot got onto the shuttle with us. And the airline pilot started talking to my son, and he was encouraging him to stay in school and talking about the importance of being in school and talking about his work as an airline pilot. I was real pleased to see that. He didn't seem uncomfortable by the fact that I was there. He didn't feel as though he couldn't talk to my son. We don't have adults who just reach out and talk to youth much like that, and we need to do that. And something that simple could actually put a child on that career path. Now, the second finding is that now in the second finding we're looking to see, okay, what enables them to persist, because you start out on a track and then you run into some bumps in the road, or it doesn't quite look to be what you thought it would be, and you may opt out. And this is a little more complicated than the first, but students who are more likely to persist towards that science career, they tend to have what we call a deeper understanding. The word we actually use was nested. It's kind of a slightly technical word, but the idea that we're trying to capture is if you're able to capture all the ideas they have about science, they have that idea, that notion of science is more interconnected in their thinking than another kid who would opt out. So the kid who's going to persist may have 50 connections. So it's really deeply embedded, whereas a kid who might not persist may have 4 connections. What that means for us is that we want to show them how their work as a scientist is interconnected into the world as a whole. So it's not, it is important that you learn the facts that they teach you in science class. You know, photosynthesis, what's the chemical formula for water. That's interesting and important, but what's really important is that we help them to make these connections between the scientific content they're learning and those things that are more relevant and meaningful for us. So for us as African people, and I've begun some writing in this area where we're actually saying we need a curriculum that looks different from what white students get. But if we're talking about water, I want you to know about the water cycle. I want you to know about the flooding of the Nile. I want you to know about deforestation. I want you to know that you see poverty in Africa because Europeans came over and they clear-cut trees, and I'm going to show you how your knowledge of the water cycle can help you to understand deforestation and starvation in Africa. We're helping them to build connections that are relevant to them racially and that have real practical relevance. That's the second finding from that study. The third finding from the study, and this was, for me, the most important, and it's going to seem contradictory when I say it, but I'll explain it. Race has no impact on a student's career decision. Now remember, I'm making a distinction between the student's career decision and their career attainment. So the decision rests within the student, right? I'm going to decide what to engage in today. Never in all of our interviews do students ever bring out race as a conscious factor in their decision-making process. So that tells me that where race becomes important is when we look at those other categories of things, their interaction with peers. We can't say race is not important because there's no black scientists. So we know it's a mitigating factor in some way. The question is, how is it a mitigating factor? And the tentative answer we got from this first study is that it's not a factor in their decision-making process. It's a factor in their interactions.
Well, in reading this, I thought it was incredible that some of the students that decided, I guess, not to pursue science-related careers, as they were going through the process, they're in college, they're taking the classes and what have you, the work that they were doing, either they didn't enjoy it or they didn't see how it would be relevant to what they wanted to do, and that pushed them off the path into doing something else and no longer wanting to pursue science. And you said this is something that, could be pretty easily corrected if we had that network that you talked about, where you have access to other folks who can tell you, well, even if you're going to have to, or if you know this in advance, you're going to have to take a semester of this class. You might not like it, but just tough through that semester, and then you get right back on path. If you don't like the way things are doing, you get through all this, you'll be empowered to change it. You'll be empowered to come up with new ways to function in this field, which I just found that very interesting, and I could see how that would work out. I guess, since it would seem black people have more opportunities now than previously. In terms of just raw numbers, how do the raw numbers look over the last 50 years in terms of the numbers of black people who are in those fields, science, technology, math, and engineering?
I couldn't go back 50 years, but the earliest, I'm just giving you statistics that I produced. The earliest statistics were taken in 1977. And at that time, fewer than 2% of practicing PhD-holding scientists were African American. I think the number was 1.7. The most recent numbers show that fewer than 2% of practicing PhD-holding scientists are African American. I think the number was 1.9. The numbers have not changed.
Wow.
Now that's after, 77 gets us about 40 years. And in 40 years, we've had affirmative action policy. We've had all kind of summer camps. We've had programs. NSF at one point was earmarking money so that any money they give out, a portion of it had to be earmarked for increasing the number of what they would call minorities in STEM fields. So I'm not going to say that's effort. What I'm going to say is that it's many times a misleading effort, right? So, and I can say this because I worked with many of these programs. I've worked on some of these camps. I've worked with some of these NSF-funded grants, and you'll have a grant and they say, okay, we need more minorities. The whole idea of referring to or labeling minorities pulls you away from African Americans. So you'll look up and they'll start having a bunch of white women and they're calling them minorities. So that doesn't mean any more blacks are getting in. Or technically an Asian is a minority. The Asians really don't need much help getting into these fields. They're doing a good job by themselves. I've looked at some of the camps I've worked with. They have ways. There was one I worked with where they would purport 95% of their graduates were going to major in science in college. And I was real impressed when I first saw the organization. But after working there for a little while, I realized that they weeded out all those students who were marginal, who had talent but maybe not opportunity, or who had opportunity but who could have used a little bit more nurturing of the talent they had. Those students kind of fell by the wayside, and what you had left was a group who I call the self-taught group. This group is going to do fine no matter what you do with them. But the organization can report back this high percentage of students going, and it looks like a successful program, but it's really a waste of money because they're advancing students who would advance anyway. Wow.
I hope that is the cup of coffee for everyone who feels like, things have changed a great deal. Just the last 40 years, the fact that the numbers really have not changed that much. And again, I don't know whether it's intentional. I don't know whether it's accidental, but as Dr. Mutegi has said repeatedly, doesn't really matter at the end of the day if the end result is we don't really have any black people who are in the science fields, and we need them desperately. We had a bunch of folks that called in. Are you okay taking some calls?
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to.
Okay. Before I hit the phone, I did want to ask, I've been bringing this up repeatedly. You have authored a ton of essays and doing reports. You've also authored a book as well, The Greatest Gifts a Parent Can Give, by our guest today. I had someone who put comments up saying that, we don't want people just parroting books, and they posted a link where a black person was saying, in my view, boasting about the fact that they had not read books and seemed to be ridiculing someone. I don't know why you're laughing. This is true. And the black person seemed to be ridiculing someone who had read books.
Don't read is bad for you. Is that the idea?
Could you share your thoughts on reading, whether you think that's important? And we're not talking about parroting reading, but just reading books for black people.
Well, boy, it's something how society changes, Look, if you have somebody who doesn't read, I'm not gonna I'm not going to argue against them too hard. I mean, that's their choice. They don't have to read if they don't want to. But it's a height of ignorance to ridicule someone else who does read.
A height of ignorance. Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
How are you hurt by somebody wanting to learn more? You know, I've never been asked that question. It's amazing to me that you actually have to defend the worth or value of reading. We come from a people who there's a quote I have, and I'm not going to read the whole quote to you. It's pretty lengthy, but basically the guy's saying that African people have produced nothing. They say we haven't produced one conqueror, one adventurer, one sailor, one mechanic. We haven't authored one work of art or one book or one story. And this was written in, I think, the 1800s. Well, what's so ludicrous about it is we're the founders of knowledge. We didn't write books. We invented paper to write books. So those are our ancestors. And now we have some Negroes running around who make mockery of the fact that we would read. What can be said to that? What can be said to that?
Enough said, sir. Enough said. I want to make sure people have the website. If you're listening to this broadcast at Blog Talk Radio, you can be lazy. All you have to do is click Dr. Mutegi's name, and it will take you to the webpage for the Sankore Institute. If you are not, the address, sankoreinstitute.org, SankoreInstitute.org, just like it sounds. Put that in, and you'll get all the information about the Institute, what they do, contact information. Please check their website out. Excellent resource. Again, SankoreInstitute.org. Person who called in, last four digits, 7607, 7607. If you have a question, your line is open.
Yes, hi. Can I be heard?
Yes, brother. We can.
Loud and clear.
Yeah, hey, Gus, another great show, another great guest. Just a really quick question. If you are an African now who has a relatively young child, I guess what would be some suggestions to really drive them in the area of science? I mean, are there, I guess, toys that can be purchased, just things that would kind of encourage that?
Yeah, one thing I would say, when you say young, what is the age that you're talking about?
Actually, not even born yet. They're coming, though.
Oh, okay. Well, certainly there are toys you could get, and if you were thinking along those lines, I think that the type of erector set type toys are good, because what they do is they allow young people to exercise their creativity and to kind of be creative, which is very important. But even more important than that, I would say, is to you want to foster an attitude of curiosity, and you can do that by you being curious as well. So. I'm a big fan of car talk, right? Not the show car talk. I mean, just talking with your children while you're in the car, because we have that drive time. And just being observant of the world we live in and posing questions to each other, coming up with answers. And it's good to not have the attitude that you have to have a right answer. So it's never wrong if you're asked a question to say, I'm not sure, what do you think? And usually when you do that, the child already suspects something, so you get a sense of what they think. And what you're doing is you're fostering in them a pattern or a habit of being inquisitive and curious and thoughtful. Also, a good resource is documentaries on various science topics. And I would almost never say to sit a child in front of a documentary and walk away. But you sit them in front of the documentary, you watch it with them, and then you critique it. So not only do you watch it to see what the producer wants you to get, but then you start looking for holes in it. What didn't they tell us? how does this compare to something else we've learned? And again, we're just fostering that idea of curiosity and being critical and inquisitive.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, bro.
Thank you for calling in, sir. Excellent questions. Cree, counter-racist evolving engineer. Did you have questions for Dr. Mutegi?
I sure do. I think this is a fabulous show, fabulous guest. The answers to the last question were amazing. I guess the first question I would ask, Doctor, I hope I get the pronunciation correct. Mutegi, is that correct? I joined the show a little late.
That is correct.
But anyways, the first question is, I had a person on my blog who is a graduate. I think he's a doctoral science student. I'm not sure exactly what the discipline, but I believe it's one of the life sciences. I think it's biomedical engineering or something like that. But he made a post that said that it's really, really difficult for black graduate level science students. He says that black students are encouraged through elementary school, even through high school. He won a number of prizes and science contests. He was encouraged and got scholarships up through the bachelor's level. But when it got to the graduate level, where you would only learn things by being around the scientists doing the work themselves and learning what new kits were out to do certain types of tests, it's like they were forming a wagon around him, and they just weren't sharing knowledge, and that unless you're actually there working on the projects that the scientists are doing, you're not going to advance to that next level. How does that play out in terms of why we don't have people more in science?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and we touched on that a bit earlier, and that goes to the idea of looking at the interactions that are necessary to make a scientist. And it's not just a matter of going to class and getting A's on your test and walking across the stage. It's having experiences that not only build your knowledge, but that also build your vita, so that when it's time to get an internship or an assistantship or a postdoc, you have some strong basis of work behind you. Because without it, no one's going to accept or hire you. The other thing is, and this is, we talked earlier about the plan laid out by Garvey and Elijah Muhammad, which was to build black institutions. It's another reason that we need to build black institutions. So, I mean, how long can we complain about white people in any field not giving us access? That's what they do. They don't give us access. I mean, we've seen this for how many hundreds of years? They came, stole us, stole all our stuff, then deny us our stuff, right? So we know they're going to do that. What our ancestors said is, we can build this ourselves, and we really can build this ourselves. And so if we had our own research labs, and a research lab doesn't need to cost billions of dollars. You can have practitioners who have consulting practices, and they run small labs, and that will be sufficient to give a small group of young people some really meaningful experiences that could form the foundation of their future science work. We have to begin thinking along those lines.
Okay. I appreciated that. If I could ask just one more question.
Absolutely.
If it hasn't already been touched on, like I said, I did join the show late. I just picked up a copy of the magazine The Economist, and the cover story is the creation of organic chemicals, life from inorganic chemicals.
Right.
Yeah. Did you talk about that already?
No, not here. We talked about it a bit at the forum in Philadelphia. But earlier we did talk about the anti-nature nature of Europeans. And so there's a... Go ahead, miss.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, sir, please.
Well, so we talked about the anti-nature nature of Europeans, and this is another development which really illustrates this. So they've created really artificial life. At the molecular level, but it's the beginning. There's a field, I think they call it synthetic biology, and the effort is to to wholesale create life in a laboratory. Again, a reasonable person would ask, why would you want to do that? And there's no reasonable answer.
Wow. Yeah, my concern, in fact, I listened to an audio that a listener sent to me about this subject, which made me want to go ahead. I would have picked it up anyway. But my connection to that development and racism white supremacy is that if any significant reason for the practice of racism white supremacy has to do with what some white people hold is a sexual and genetic advantage that black people have, then if they're able to overcome that in the laboratory, that could mean a solution for the system of racism white supremacy, or help it, or it could be a very foreboding for our continued existence. That may sound science fictional, but given the amount of work that scientists have done on melanin and the clear interest that they have in being more solar friendly, their bodies being more solar friendly, I don't think that it's a ridiculous question as to whether or not there's a relationship. But do you think it's ridiculous?
Be more specific. I think what part is ridiculous?
Okay. Do you think that possibly what they're trying to do with this creation of organic chemicals, and they would say it's not artificial life at all, they think it's an extension. That's the argument I saw, that it's an extension of evolution itself. Do you think that it is ridiculous to say that the reason they're so interested in being able to create organic compounds and a quote-unquote life itself is that they want to be able to create the bodies that we have, much like the film Avatar?
Oh, right.
Do you think that's a ridiculous thought?
Well, I wouldn't. I'm not going to call the thought ridiculous. I wouldn't do that. And I guess what I would say is I don't know their reason, right? And that would be a hypothesis, I guess. And at the end of the day, if that's the reason, doesn't matter. So one thing we know for sure is that we have a decided advantage. Nature, God gives us a decided advantage over Europeans. So we've read many of us, Amos Wilson actually summarized it in his book, The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child. And he summarized a set of work which showed that African babies far surpass European babies in their natural biological development. I mean, in some of these genetic markers or developmental markers, we hit 3 to 4, sometimes 5 times faster than European babies hit them. Okay, so I look at that and I say, well, there's something inherent in African children that gives them an advantage over European children. What we see Europeans doing is they use tools and technology to supplement what nature does not give them. Now, this, yes, do I see that it could be or would be used as a tool to supplement their disadvantage? Absolutely. Now, what they're going to actually do with it, I wouldn't even try to offer a guess. But history shows that it's not going to be a good thing. Where have any of these developments that they've come up with actually turned out to be a great thing for humankind? The examples are few and far between.
How about polio vaccines?
I don't want to.
Yeah, wow.
I don't want to invalidate myself by making this argument.
Okay.
I don't know of any advancement that the European has that makes life on the planet fundamentally more worth living than before they were on the scene. So yeah, they have vaccines and other types of medical treatments, but many of the treatments they offer solve problems that they've created. So cancer is a great example. They don't have a cure for cancer yet, but if they did, can we say, oh, this cure for cancer makes life better? I would say before Europeans, we didn't even have cancer to this degree.
Wow. I don't. Thank you. I don't want to monopolize the line. This is
Sure.
fascinating. I want to hear you answer somebody else's questions and learn.
Sure. Thank you for calling.
Somebody called in from a blocked number. If you called with a blocked number and you have a question for Dr. Mutegi, your line is open.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, sir. We can hear you loud and clear.
Hi, Dr. Mutegi. Yeah, I was reading, I know you're a biologist, and I was reading that some white females, they don't start their periods till they're like 17, 18.
Wow.
Because they're not under stress. And so my question is, could you talk about the difference between true learning and conditioning, and how they and how it pertains to the frontal lobe and the hindbrain, as it pertains to the fear being the hindbrain and the higher learning, which is the frontal lobes?
Yeah, I'm sorry, brother. That's a little bit out of my realm of expertise.
Oh, okay. Well, basically, it's just saying that you can't learn under stress. When you're under stress, your brain just goes to the hindbrain, and you're now under anxiety, and that's what our students are going through, basically.
Okay. Well, and that's yes, that's the point you were getting to. What's interesting is that, and there's a brother who is with an organization, War on the Horizon, out of Washington, D.C., and he touches on this a little bit. A lot of his work deals with sexual predators and child molestation and the homosexual nature of Europeans and their effort to homosexualize the society that we live in. One point he makes, which is very good, and it's one that sticks with me as an educator, and it's what you're touching on. We give students test scores, and they take this test, and then we look and see score differences between these tests, and we see that the white scores are much higher than the black scores. And now we take that difference to mean that somehow the black students have a problem that needs to be fixed. And you're alerting us to what is a very real problem that's overlooked, and that is, it's not necessarily that the black students need to be fixed, but that the conditions under which they're functioning are what's problematic. Now, the irritated genie, the brother I mentioned, he says if you have a child who's molested, they have to go to school every day, and they've got to pretend as though they live a normal life. So the teacher's talking about George Washington chopping down a cherry tree, and this child is thinking about this monster who ravages them every time they go home. They're not going to perform as well on the test asking about George Washington. And I'm glad that you brought this up, brother, because it's something that we really need to consider in the education of our youth. What kind of circumstances surround their education? Under what conditions are we asking them to learn? Now, I wouldn't in a blanket way say that stress is always bad for learning. I think that there are things that we want to teach, and there are times when we do want to create stressful environments, because sometimes we want to teach a child how to perform under stress. My son likes to play basketball, and he's getting bigger now. He'll be bigger than me probably in about a year or two. And so periodically when he shoots, I smack him in the face. I want him to learn how to shoot the ball under stress, right? But certainly we can't hold our children to the expectation of enduring the ravages of racism, white supremacy, and then act as though they don't deal with those ravages when we look at how they perform academically. Another reason we need to go back to Garvey and back to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and create our own institutions. We need to create spaces that are safe for our youth to come to, wherein they can learn without the ravages of this type of stress.
Wow. Excellent question. I believe that was caller at 909. Thank you for excellent question. Someone called in, last four digits 9992. 9992. If you have a question for Dr. Mutegi, your line is open.
Thank you for the constructive information, Doctor. I'm just listening now. Thank you.
Okay. Certainly, brother.
Thank you for listening in. Let's see. Skydrifter13, you have a hand up. Do you have a question for Dr. Mutegi? Your line is open.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Yes. Very loud.
Okay. I'll turn the mic down slightly. Great show. Wonderful illustration of being very informed as to what's going on in regards to us having to take an active role in our destiny. I actually wanted to make a statement and then ask you two questions, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. This is from a book by Chancellor Williams. I'm sure I'm sure you know of him.
Yes.
Or you know of his works, The Destruction of Black Civilization. A passage from page 328, The Direction of Civilization. Since the actual nature of things, racism will never be washed away. The human race could escape the predicted general war between races and reach a real state of civilization, at last through a symbiotic society. There will be no pretense of love and brotherhood, which did not exist in fact. The fierce and increasing battles of whites against integration illustrate the point most clearly. And this is why people of the African race will have to accept the harsh fact that they are rejected by the whites, back up and begin to recognize for a position of power that commands respect, not love, and one that will therefore bring about the kind of cooperation and opportunities that eventuate in the real equality and equal justice. Equality simply means the removal of every barrier that prevents a human being from realizing his fullest potential. In saying this statement, I just wanted to ask, if non-white people carry on taking no active approaches to the destruction of the planet, what do you see coming? What do you see coming for us as a people, let's say maybe 10 years, 20 years down the road, for our future generations, if we do not take an active role in preventing the destruction of nature? What do you see happening?
Oh, brother, that's a good question. I appreciate that. You're making me think. Well, my answer is going to be more intuitive than, because I haven't really thought about this other than just hearing it now, right? So what you're asking, if I understand it correctly, is if we do nothing to stop the terrorism on the planet,
that's right,
what's going to happen in the next, you gave me a time frame. What was the time frame? How many years?
It could be 10 to 20 years.
The next 10 to 20 years. Okay.
But by the way, from what I see and from my observations, I suspect that things are increasingly getting more technological in regards to introducing technology into schools. Younger children are beginning to be more techno-savvy at younger ages. We have a society where the acceptance of technology is seen as a part or a way of life.
Yeah.
What do you see if this continues? If this type of outlook on reality continues for non-white people? What do you see happening?
Yeah. So, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend that time frame out a bit. So, and I'm going to say maybe the next, I think 10 to 20 years for what I see in the future is too short of a time period. I don't know that it will look substantially different. There'll be some new gadgets and gizmos, but I don't know that we would feel this is not the world I recognize. If we go forward 100, maybe 200 years, we definitely would see a different world if things are left unchecked. And I really don't want to, I'm not an extremist in my thinking. I tend to be pretty measured and even somewhat conservative. I don't think it's an overstatement to say that in a very real sense, left unchecked, what we see happening would lead to the destruction of the planet. I don't mean that the planet would not still rotate around the sun. It would. But the people might not be here, or might be here in such diminished numbers that it would look like they're not here. And I'm just going to give you a couple of examples to illustrate why I don't think this is far-fetched. One example is what they call superbugs. Superbugs are bacteria that are resistant to any known form of antibiotic. Nature gives us a formula. Everything is checked by something else. So bacteria are very efficient. They reproduce very rapidly in large numbers. They're fairly hard to attack. But fungi are very effective at attacking them. Okay, so fungi are a check against bacteria. Well, what's happened in recent years is we've overprescribed penicillin and other antibiotics so that you're producing generations of bacteria that are resistant to antibiotics. That's what they call a superbug. So this bacteria now, there's nothing to check against it, and it wreaks havoc. So in hospitals, you have people dying of very basic staph infections because there's nothing that exists that will kill the bacteria. Had this been left to nature's course, everything would proceed in a normal pace. So you have bacteria, and then the bacteria is exposed to penicillin. Most die, but not all, and some are resistant. So the fungi then adapt their penicillin to attack those who had those bacteria that adapted to the previous form of penicillin. So there's a constant balance. Nature gives us this constant balance. By overprescribing it in doctors' offices, by feeding antibiotics to cattle, you really upset the balance of nature such that the fungi never had an opportunity to develop any counter to this new breed of bacteria. It's not far-fetched to say that substantial numbers of people might, in the relatively near future, 40, 50, 60 years, be dying of basic bacterial infections. That's one scourge or illness. Look at what's happening in food production. The food that we're eating is killing us, literally. You have children now, 12, 13, 14 years old, who are contracting type 2 diabetes from the food that we eat. I mentioned Michael Pollan's book earlier in the show, and as early as the turn of the century, not 2000, but 1900s, Western physicians were traveling around the world, and they were looking at people who had non-Western diets. And what they found is that wherever they went, people had very, very good health. There was one dentist who's Canadian, but his practice was in Cleveland. He found that where people had a traditional diet, by traditional we mean non-Western diet, they didn't have any of the normal signs of tooth problems. They didn't have cavities. They didn't have tooth decay. They didn't need braces. They had normal, regular, straight teeth without ever going to see a dentist. What they began to find was that where you had a Western diet, you had a set of diseases, and they called these diseases Western diseases: high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, wherever you had a Western diet. Now, I said
it's funny you say that because there was a gentleman in YouTube who is a doctor. If I could recall his name, I would. But this individual, black male,
Hello?
It looks like he dropped off. The caller dropped off. So
we lost the caller.
Yeah. I don't know. Did you get to finish answering his question? Or?
Oh no, I hadn't finished, but that was okay. I was interested to see who he was referring to. But what they found, this is in the early 1900s, was that eating a Western diet causes these diseases. Nowadays, we associate these diseases with black people, as though we're the only ones who get diabetes, high blood pressure, and hypertension. But these are actually Western diseases caused from a Western diet. Now, in the past 100 years, has there been any substantial movement to improve the Western diet? No. It's gotten completely, absolutely 100% worse. And it keeps getting worse. There's no effort to make it any better. So his earlier question was, unchecked, where is this going to go? I don't see any positive prospects the next 1 to 200 years. And so we really want to do something to get it in check, and we also want to create some space, some safe space for those of us who see clearly, those of us who have some degree of consciousness, and who I like to say the black people who love black people. We want to have some safe space to kind of protect ourselves from what they're producing.
Wow. I don't know, the gentleman, he has not rung back in. If he does, I'll get him back on so he can give us the gentleman's name that he was referencing.
Okay.
Zara Ali. I hope I'm saying it correctly. Did you have a question, or are you just, either way? If you have a question, your line is open. If you're just listening, that's fine as well. Zara Ali, did you have a question for Dr. Mutegi? Okay, looks like she might be just listening. No problem. I wanted to ask, if the gentleman calls back, I'll get him on, but I did want to ask your commentary talking about the cloned animals and the seeds and what have you. It sounds like you're being a hater. It sounds like you're just, being overly critical and you're just being a hater. You have an article where you address that, and that was probably one of my favorite reads, The Virtues of Hate, A Guide for Parents. Can you touch on what you shared in that report?
I will, and I just have to say, my father used to work with me for a couple of years with a nonprofit, and boy, he and I went back and forth about this article. He did not like the idea of having hate in the title. It'll just rub people the wrong way. Come on, Pops, this is catchy. It gets your attention, right? But basically, the idea is that we've come to, through political correctness, demonize the idea of hate. So if ever you can say someone is operating on hate, then it's a bad thing. Or if you have hate in your heart, that's a bad thing. And I wanted to take that idea and challenge it. And so that's the title, The Virtues of Hate, that hate is not really a bad thing. Hate is a human emotion, and it serves us well. And basically in the article I say that the Creator made it such that we hate those things that are bad for us, and we love those things that are good for us. And if we don't, we've got a problem. So, yeah, if you say I sound like a hater, I hate clone meat, you're right, because I don't think clone meat is good for us. And I would say that's it in a nutshell.
Wow. I found that very interesting because, as you said, the so-called political correct environment where, you're not supposed to hate and you're not supposed to, it seems like you're not even supposed to have any serious criticisms about something that's happening.
Right.
Even that is kind of looked at with suspicion, and I really appreciated that the Creator gave you a certain amount of logic and a certain amount of sense, and if you're feeling that you don't like something, that's probably for a constructive reason.
Probably for a good reason, right?
I would highly encourage folks, make sure you check that one out. I'll give you the title again, The Virtues of Hate, A Guide for Parents. I guess that article has been out for a while now. You should have some feedback from folks. Who was right, Pops or you? How have people received this particular report?
Oh, it's funny. I've not gotten any direct feedback on that one. None critical, I should say. None critical.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Looks like you might have been correct on that. I loved it. I think it's outstanding scholarship. We need more of it. The gentleman did call back in, Skydrifter. He did call back.
Great.
Your line is open, sir. Got you. Your line is open, Skydrifter.
Sorry, can I be heard?
Yes, you can.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Gus. Thank you. Sorry. I was just saying before the connection dropped. Great. It's a great show, by the way. Thank you very much. Yes, there is a gentleman on YouTube who does speak of packaged foods in terms of plastics having an adverse effect on non-white males, and he said that the estrogen count within black males has skyrocketed over a particular period of time, and another interesting thing that he did mention is that we should be eating foods that correlate with the acronyms ROY-G-BIV, red, orange, yellow, ROY-G-BIV, the colors of the rainbow, because those foods are, given energy by the sun. Hence, we need to sustain that energy by eating those foods. So I do apologize for cutting you in the middle, but would you have anything to expound on that at all?
No, I'm not really familiar with that video in particular.
Oh, no. On the mere fact that the estrogen count within black males has increased to the point where we're beginning to see a lot of feminist or feminine behavior within black males.
Well, if you allow me to be a little facetious, I don't know if it's the food and the packaging, but something got these brothers a little light in the loafers. I see a lot of twinkle toes running around here.
Same thing in London. I can agree.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised. I mean, on a more serious note, definitely there is an effort socially to homosexualize us, to effeminize us. And the brother I mentioned earlier, Irritated Genie, that's his focus, and that's where I learned so much about it. And he tends to focus on the cultural and social efforts to effeminize the black male. But it's very true, very, very true that your environment, I don't mean other people as much as the natural environment, can also have a negative effect. So we see, toxins in the environment do have not only a negative effect on us physically, on our physical biology, but also on our behavior. My sister, who's she does some work in the area of food health and food science, and one thing she points to is that many times we have food allergies, and we're not even aware that we have them because they don't manifest themselves in hives or a rash, but it changes our behavior. And so sometimes you eat something that you're allergic to, and you're very short-tempered, or you're depressed, and you don't realize it's the food that you're eating that's making you that way. So the idea is very tenable. I don't have the specifics to speak on it, but just hearing it, I definitely want to know more of the specifics of it, and I wouldn't at all discount that possibility.
We had two other folks that had questions. You have time for two more questions?
Oh, sure.
Okay. A different person called in from a blocked number. If you called in more recently with a blocked number and you have a question for Dr. Mutegi, your line is open.
Is it me?
That would be you.
Oh, hi. I didn't actually have a question, but I believe Skydrifter may have been talking about Dr. Layla Africa, because I know I've heard him talk quite a bit on European and Western diets and getting off of sugar and junk and crap food. But you might want to check him out. It's I think it's two L's, L-L-A-I-L-A, Africa with a K. Dr. Layla Africa.
Thank you, sister.
You're welcome.
Questions? No questions?
I'm just enjoying listening. I caught up late.
Oh, okay. No problem. Thank you for supporting. And last four digits, 7607, 7607. If you had a question, your line is open.
Yeah, thanks, Gus. This is my second question. I'm currently on the Gulf Coast, and I was wondering if the doctor could, give us an African perspective on the impending oil slick that's predicted to hit our shores really any day now. Could you speak to that? I mean, we already know that these people are hell-bent, accidental or not, on destroying the planet, but, I mean, what can you say, as far as, consequences, long-term, short-term, of this oil? Some are saying that nature can take care of it, microbes. I don't know. I would just, ask a doctor with an African perspective what he thinks.
Yeah. I appreciate the question. And this the whole event is so egregious and so obviously bad. It's almost silly to even say how horrible it is. I'm gonna give the audience 7 things to think about in terms of traits that kind of structure and guide European science. Remember, we said that to understand the science that people produce, we have to understand the people who are producing it, right? And after I give you these, I'm going to tell you where they come from. The first trait, and this is a trait of people in general, a failure to conform to social norms. So there are certain people who fail to conform to social norms. A second trait, deceitfulness and manipulativeness. Deceitfulness and manipulativeness. A third, failure to plan ahead. Failure to plan ahead. Now, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to keep reading, but before I continue, I want to ask, as you hear these, do these sound like traits of the people involved in this oil spill in the Gulf? Okay, number 4, irritability and aggressiveness. Irritability and aggressiveness. Number 5, reckless disregard for the safety of self and others. A reckless disregard for the safety of self and others. Number 6, consistent irresponsibility. A consistent irresponsibility. And then number 7, a lack of remorse after having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another person. A lack of remorse after having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another person. Now, these are the traits, according to the American Psychological Association, of sociopathic behavior. If you want to identify whether or not somebody's a sociopath or not, you assess them on whether or not and to what degree they manifest these 7 traits. I was given a lecture in Philadelphia with Sister Nefertari of the Children of Southampton, and I asked the audience which of these traits sound most like those involved with this oil slick. Unanimously, the group said all of them. You cannot tell me that we're not dealing with people who are operating in the way that sociopaths operate. Lack of remorse after having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another person. So you, whether on purpose or by accident, you spill oil into the Gulf, and it's killing all the wildlife, and your predictions are we won't be able to stop this maybe by August. And this is in May. Okay? And you had one executive who came out and said, well, as a percentage of the water in the ocean, there's not much oil. What is that?
Wow.
What is that? So, I don't know what much more to say about it, brother. I mean, it's so egregious. It just makes you think, if we're going to have any future, I don't know that we can have a future with these people. I don't know. I mean, on what point do we come to an agreement or negotiate or work something out? Someone who is so callous as to destroy what's really a pretty substantial body of water and all the life surrounding that body of water, and to be so callous and indifferent to it. I don't know how you work with that person.
Wow. I want to not only acknowledge, since you've mentioned him a couple times now, the irritated genie. He was just here 3 days ago on Memorial Day, made his second appearance here. Excellent presentation. He touched a lot of the issues that you mentioned. And Sister Nefertari, give her website as well, because that's how I found out about Dr. Mutegi in the first place. Ourcause.com, OURKOS.com. Please support her efforts with children of Southampton. Phenomenal honor to have our guest with us today, Dr. Jomo W. Mutegi. I want to give out the address again for the Sankore Institute, Sankore Institute.org, and Sankore, SANKORE, Institute.org, Sankore Institute.org. It has been just an incredible privilege to have you here. I'm extremely grateful you were able to share some of your Thursday afternoon with us. Anything you would like to share with us in closing about the Institute, or just anything you would like us to keep in mind?
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity. And there's two efforts that we have that I want people to be aware of, and I also want to suggest ways that they could support these efforts if they're so inclined. The first is an organization that we have, and it's called Sankore Vanguard. Sankore Vanguard. And Sankore Vanguard is an organization for African American young men in grades 8 through 12. Each summer for 4 weeks, they come spend 4 weeks with us, day and night. It's a residential experience. And in that time, we immerse them in the study of nature and in experiences that help them to appreciate the value of being African men. So there are 4 foci for this unit of study. One foci, which I mentioned, is a study of nature. One is a study of African history. One is brotherhood, and the fourth is life skills. It's a tremendous experience. If you go to YouTube, you can see we have a brief documentary summarizing the experience. If you do a search for Sankore Vanguard, it will come up, and I think you'll also find it on our website. The type of support that we're always looking for young men and parents and or guardians who are interested in giving their youth this type of exposure. We're also always open to organizations. So we really like it when we have an organization come forward and say, we have 6 or 7 young men who we want to participate. We like for them to come as a group, because that way when they leave, they have a group of young men who they've shared this experience with. And as always, of course, we are always open to funding. So if you are able and willing to contribute support, we can earmark, at your request, we can earmark your support for one young person in particular. As you can imagine, it's expensive to feed a 13-year-old boy for 4 weeks. Have you ever done that, brother?
I have been 13, and I had a healthy appetite.
Right. So you know how we eat, and you know what kind of staff it takes to keep an eye on a group of young men. So between feeding them, housing them, and being sure that they all stay on the square, those are the bulk of our expenses. And so it costs about $2,500 per young man for that experience. Many of us are not accustomed to paying that type of money for academic enrichment for our children, though it's very normal outside of our community. Europeans will spend that and more to send their son or daughter to a robotics camp. But we understand why we are where we are. It's not that we're here because we just don't want to we don't want nice things for our children. We absolutely do. But sometimes others of us need help. So there may be someone out there who doesn't have a child themselves but who wants to support a child. We do accept the contributions earmarked for a child so that they can attend on scholarship if their parents can't afford it. Then the other effort that I will mention is one that we're just beginning to establish, and this is more for information purposes. We don't really at this point have a means of accepting contributions, but it would be outstanding if you would share with others that this is a project that Dr. Mutegi is doing and that Sankore Institute is supporting. We are establishing a study abroad initiative for African American college students. To my knowledge, and I have a student I'm working with who does research on study abroad programs. To my knowledge, there is no study abroad program that exists exclusively for African Americans and exclusively focusing on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We're working to establish one. As it's outlined currently, our study abroad initiative will take a group of African American college students away for a 1-month period. We'll spend 2 weeks in Kenya doing service work where we'll actually apply their scientific expertise to addressing practical concerns that Kenyans have. And then the second 2 weeks of that experience will be spent doing a study tour of ancient Kemet, so that the new group of blacks with expertise in science, come out with an appreciation that Barack Obama is not really the first black president. He's the first black president of a small country in the 20th century. But we had Sutons in ancient Kemet who built monuments as big as any building that the European has ever seen or even envisioned building. We need to know that about ourselves. We need to have a sense of where we come from. So we want to have a study tour associated with this study abroad program.
Wow. Information about these projects is available if you go to Sankore Institute.org. Again, Sankore Institute.org. You can see more about these projects and the phenomenal effort of Dr. Jomo W. Mutegi and his colleagues. Man, outstanding information. I'm just grateful that you were able to come and hang out with us for a little while and share some of your expertise. I will definitely be sharing the address so folks can support what you're doing and be more informed about it. Anytime, if you are interested to come back and share and let us know what you all are up to, open invitation, sir. Would love to hear from you again.
Brother Gus, I appreciate it, and I really appreciate you for having me.
Thank you, sir. The pleasure was all ours. I will definitely be in touch again, and the web address for listeners, again, Sankore Institute.org. Please support the website. If you're listening at Blog Talk Radio, you can just click his name, take you right to the website. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Please continue your outstanding work, and we will definitely be in touch, sir.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Context. Thank you, sir. Context of white supremacy, Gus T Renegade, in for another program. Hope the information was productive. We have a full switchboard. I'm going to take a commercial, come right back and check. Folks can share. They have thoughts on the program, what they heard, what I suspect was fabulous information from the good Dr. Mutegi. We'll take a quick commercial, and we will be right back.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At CounterRacism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open-source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by CounterRacism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
Our people are very serious about not being very serious. Meanwhile, white people are very serious about playing hardball against us. And this hardball is called genocide.
Context of white supremacy, Gus T Renegade. Again, that was Dr. Kamal Kambone. I wholeheartedly agree with his sentiment. And black people, non-white people need to get very serious, especially with regards to white people. I think Dr. Mutegi, phenomenal illustration of being serious and just getting work done to try to solve problems and having an accurate understanding of white people and how they relate to us, black people worldwide, and how they have done so for the last who knows how long, hundreds of years, if not longer. Before I hit the phone lines, we will be back tomorrow. This was a guest request. I keep saying I should be allowed to just talk and say all kinds of things, because I said repeatedly, I'm not a nice person. I'm not doing this to make friends with anybody who calls the program or supports the effort. This is about solving problems, not making friends. If that happens in the process of solving the problem of racism, white supremacy, hooray. But that was not my objective with the cows, to go out and make friends with other victims of racism, white supremacy. The objective was to share constructive information. But one person who listens to the program suggested that I have guests for tomorrow's program on, I think they saw lectures that this person was giving. I'm not sure. The person has also written books, but the person, I think they saw some lectures, and they thought this person would be a good guest. Chip Smith, a white male, he authored a book. It is The Cost of Privilege. That's the name of the book, but he uses the term white supremacy a lot. He's an older gentleman. I don't know. He might be in the vein of Pharrell Winfrey for folks who heard the broadcast where she's been here, but he looks like he might be a more honest white person, suspected racist white supremacist. We'll have to see. But he will be here tomorrow. You have to forgive me. I'm not looking at the schedule right now, so I don't know the exact time. I guess I should be more professional and get you the time for the broadcast. Let's see. Yeah, it's taking a long time. I'll get it as I chat, but he'll be, I got it. Okay. He'll be here tomorrow, same time as today, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 12 noon Pacific. For Skydrifter, if you're calling from London, I believe that would be 8 p.m. 8 p.m. London time. There you go. Chip Smith, but he should be here tomorrow, and I guess we'll be here all weekend long. We'll have a show Saturday. It's not programmed yet, but hopefully y'all can come hang out for that one, because I read a letter from a non-white listener who was talking about how difficult it is not having that network and feeling kind of isolated, not having friends and such. Non-white people, we have been groomed to be in conflict with each other, and they felt that would be a constructive program, and I agree. So we're going to do that program on Saturday. That'll just be for folks if you want to call in, share your view on this subject. I don't know how it is in London. Skydrifter, that might be cool if he wants to participate. But we're going to do that on Saturday. I think we're going to do it Saturday evening. I'm not sure when I get the time. It'll be nailed down by tomorrow. So if you tune in tomorrow, I can give you the time. But it'll most likely, or it is going to be Saturday, June 5th. And then on Sunday, we'll have Mr. Perkinson, Mr. Robert Perkinson. He is the author of Texas Tough. I didn't want to do any shows about prisons, because I just felt like, everybody already knows this. Prison industrial complex, right? Scooping up black males, right? Greater confinement. I thought that was a slam dunk. We all know that. Creed did a phenomenal program with Michelle Alexander. I have been posting. I'm on her street team, I guess. I've been posting it to different spots online, and people were just thrilled with the effort. This white guy did this book, and he basically traced the whole boom in prisons back to slavery. And the book has just been, at this point we've done a lot of programs, and I've had to read a lot of material on racism, white supremacy, so I'm not really that surprised by too much anymore. I've been stunned frequently reading this gentleman's book. Number one, it is incredibly thorough, and number two, he uses the term white supremacy a lot, and he talks about it as a total system. It's just incredibly thorough, like a white person who's on the team thorough writing. Access to material. He went and dug through the archives and got prison letters from 100 years ago. Just extraordinary amount of detail in Texas Tough. But again, it basically traces the whole boom in prisons to the state of Texas specifically, and it's just saturated with how this is all about racism, white supremacy, from plantation to penitentiary. Texas Tough, that's this Sunday, should be phenomenal if it's anything like the book. I have been very surprised, pleasantly surprised, but that'll be Sunday. So we have shows every day till Sunday. The next thing, the gentleman called in yesterday, and I have to say, a big factor for me as a host of this program is to not engage in conflict with non-white people. That's why you'll have guests come on the program, and they'll say things that if you've been listening to the cows, you know that I don't agree with, but I don't, go at them, because if I've invited the person to be there, I've invited them for a reason. So they have got to have some information that I want to get out. So I really make an effort to avoid having conflict with non-white people, even if they say something I don't agree with. The gentleman who called the previous program with the Ragsdales on Tuesday, June 1st of this week, I appreciated the caller. He said he'd been listening to the program and sharing it and what have you, and he said that I had misquoted him, and he had posted comments several times linking to a different non-white person who was giving a lecture presentation. And the gentleman, I think in one of his comments, he made a comment that was about the dangers of parroting books, reading and just parroting what you've read. And the link that he posted, I had seen it before. It wasn't new. I'd seen this link, more than a year ago, this gentleman giving his talk. But basically, from his statements, it would suggest that he was boasting about the fact that he didn't read. And from his statements, his comments suggested that he was ridiculing another person because they had read a lot of books. Anything like that, I am staunchly opposed to. If you look at this program, you see the number of authors that I've had here, the amount of books that I've had to read to do this broadcast. Anything that remotely sounds as if it is suggesting that there's something incorrect about reading, I am going to pounce on that. You're going to hear me talking about it repeatedly. I'm not saying that the gentleman, because I deleted the comments, and if they come back up, I'll be deleting them again. But anything that sounds as if it's suggesting that there's something incorrect about reading, I will have something to say about it. And I'm not going to have a discussion about this with anybody. Just letting you know my feelings, my thoughts on that, and that's why I brought it up again today. So I'm not looking to have conflict with any non-white person. I'm not even going to have a discussion about this. I'm just letting you know anything that sounds like it might even be thinking about suggesting that there's something incorrect about reading, you can expect a response from Gus. There you go. And I guess just to tack that on, I don't call reading just picking up a book and then going out and reading verbatim or sharing with another person verbatim what you read. That's not reading. I am all about evaluating material. I think anyone, if you have listened to the programs that I have done, I think you will see me challenge authors on things that they have written, if I think it's accurate, if I think it makes sense, if I think even that they're contradicting something that they wrote in their book, which has happened on this program. So I'm definitely, I don't know what this person means when they say read, but when I talk about reading, I am talking about thinking, challenging your brain, evaluating what the person has put on the page. Do you think this is true? Does this make sense? It's most likely going to contradict something that someone else has written. So you're going to have to do some thinking, some serious thinking. I think one of the reasons that people don't enjoy reading is because it requires a lot more mental energy than just watching TV or a lot of other activities. And the example that I used, if you think about watching a movie, if you fall asleep watching a movie, right, you can fall asleep for 15 minutes. The film does not stop. You'll wake up in 15 minutes. It'll be wherever it is in the film, and you can keep watching. You can even, it might not even, severely disrupt your movie watching experience. You might be able to piece things together and keep right on rolling. If you're reading a book and you fall asleep, the pages do not continue to turn. Wherever you fall asleep at, that is it, because reading is a much more intense activity with regards to your attention, your focus. Your mind has to be a lot more active when you read. So I'm definitely not saying just go and read something and just because it's in a book, that becomes Bible and you just go around chanting that as your mantra for the rest of your days on the planet. Definitely not saying that. I wouldn't even call that reading. But I do think for black people, the problem that I see with us is not that I see us piled up in libraries and just going around parroting information. The problem I see is that we don't have that information and we don't spend time reading. that will end that point. Before I get to the phone, I also want to say this is just a random thought that I had, that I strongly suspect that for a great many of my listeners, I might be the black male voice that they hear the most. I don't feel good about that as a victim of racism, white supremacy, and I don't even have resources, so I don't feel good about that at all. But I worked in a school situation where there was no question I was the black male that a lot of those non-white students had the most contact with, and it was a frightening thought then, and it's still a frightening thought for me that for some folks I might be the black male voice that they hear the most. Yikes, replace white supremacy with justice as soon as possible. I don't know how long I'm going to hang out today, depending on how I feel about the calls. But all of the folks that called in, I'm about to open the lines up. Even if it is great, we're not going to hang out for the full extra hour because I have to prep for tomorrow's show. And, you know, I'm a victim. I want to put my feet up a little bit as well. And I have reading. I have a lot of reading to do. So we're not hanging out for the full time. But if you called in, I'm about to open everybody's lines up so you can share your thoughts, comments, feedback on today's program or anything else racism, white supremacy related. Everybody that called in, your line is open. Yes, everybody that called in, your line is open.
It was a very constructive show.
Thanks. This is Sky Drifter. First time I've had any vocal contact with the gentleman. Thank you for you've done promotional videos for Cree and myself. Thank you for supporting the program all the way across the pond. I hope the program has been of some constructive value for you, sir.
Most definitely, Gus. Learned a great deal from Dr. Mutegi, and I would only agree with what he stated near enough at the beginning when he said that we need to subscribe to the philosophies of Marcus Garvey and Elijah Muhammad. That people, you know, we need more non-white people, need more institutions, and I would only agree with that.
Here.
Gus, I did want to ask you a question, though.
Go right ahead, sir.
Do you feel as if the promotional work or the videos that I've done, do you see them as constructive?
Yes. I might not have seen every one, but I definitely know I've seen at least, I think, 4 or 5 of them. I think I out of all the videos that I have seen, I'll put it this way: out of all of your work that I've seen, I have not seen anything where I was not one, surprised because I didn't know. I think all of the ones that you've done, I just kind of stumbled on them, like, oh, look at this. Everything that I've seen, I was just very surprised, very humbled, and yes, I thought they were very constructive, and I appreciate the time and energy that you put into putting those projects together. Creed's here, she can speak for herself, but I suspect she is most likely appreciative as well.
Thank you very much. The only reason why I ask, and again, you know, I'm not in it for the praise. Again, you know, the only thing that I want to do is allow non-white people to know what is happening to us, you know, around the planet. Period. Other than saying that, it's funny how we over here in the UK do not really have many outlets in terms of us grasping this term, this type of information. So, you know, for me, it was almost as if it was an eye opener when I found out about the cows and you know, you know, Nellie Fuller and Dr. Welsing. It was a real eye opener. So the intention of those videos are really to do the same, to allow other non-white people to know that yes, we are in a world system of racism, white supremacy.
Can I be?
I can hear you now.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Let me apologize for the delay in echoing Gus's sentiments because I was trying to speak, but apparently my mic wasn't plugged in. Skydrifter, I am so happy to actually hear what you sound like. It wouldn't really be possible for me to express my appreciation for what you've done to promote the cows and also my show. It's just to know that there are serious black people on the other side of the pond who are trying to follow the logic and aren't waiting for orders from headquarters is, like Gus said, humbling and amazing. So it's just great to hear your voice and get your perspective. Thank you for letting us hear you.
Cree, and I could only share those sentiments with you as well, because with you and Gus, it's almost as if it's like a balance. Here you have a male who, openly questions white people, to find out if they are racist, and here you have a female doing the same. Not only engaging with white people, but yet non-white people. And in saying that, I've learned a great deal. Other people within my circle have learned a great deal, and I can only thank both of you for your efforts and what you've done in order for the greater good of non-white people. Because again, over here in London, we have no outlets. We have nothing in regards to being able to speak out openly in whatever type of medium. That's why I took it upon myself to use YouTube as a medium. Whereas a lot of the young generation have kind of hopped onto that. I would also like them to look more into Nellie Fuller and into the areas of activity that non-white people have been dominated with. You'd get verbally shut down if you ever tried to speak out openly over here, in regards to race, or that's just a closed book over here. So I thank you both very much. And Gus, I know you don't look. Yeah, sorry. I know Gus doesn't like to be praised, and it's all about solving the issues, solving the problems. But again, I thank both of you. Thank you, Cree and Gus.
I wish there was more that could be said, but I think if we did, we would do a disservice to what has been said. So, yeah.
I sent you my Skype handle, Skydrifter. Don't say it on the air. But that was me. I wanted to add you as a contact. That way, if you want to participate in a program, and if you can't call in through the Blog Talk Radio line, I can get you in on my line on Skype. So add me.
I have now added you guys. Thank you very much.
Groovy. No problem. Yeah. I don't know if you're free this Saturday. You all are 8 hours, so is it 10 p.m. For you, Skydrifter?
At the moment, it is 10 p.m. Just gone 10. So at the same time on Saturday, I'll unfortunately be at the plantation, and I finish a hard graft at 8 o'clock. So by the time I get back, I'd at least meet the middle of the show, so I could participate from at least halfway through.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we don't have a concrete time yet, but I have to talk to the person who suggested this program and see how they would feel, because we might even be willing to bump it down to 1. So then it would be 11 p.m. For you. But yeah, I have your info now, so I can talk. We'll see about making that. It'll be Saturday. We'll get a concrete time by tomorrow, and that would be cool to have someone from a different area of the world to share their thoughts on having companionship as a non-white person under a system of white supremacy.
Most definitely.
I think the thing there were so many parts. I wish I could have tuned into the show earlier to make sure I heard it all before I got a chance to ask questions, but the caller before me asked what could be done to encourage science as a career, or at least science as a mindset for their offspring. And Dr.
Mutegi.
Yeah, Mutegi. Dr. Mutegi, one of the answers that he gave was to simply exhibit curiosity as a way of being yourself. That curiosity is the basis of scientific inquiry. It's what it is. And but the key thing that he said that I really liked hearing was to not only read things critically, because everything can really be thought of as a science, but explicitly scientific materials, to not only read them critically or watch the documentaries or the programming critically, but to listen and watch for what the gaps are, what's not being said, what questions can be formed by what's not being said, because that's so key that white people leave a lot of things out. And though the things that they leave out are usually the questions that need to be answered that pertains to us. So, yeah, I really enjoyed his answers. I mean, he was so informative through all of the question answering, through what I heard of the programming. Like, you know, everybody just has their particular favorites. I've loved a lot of the guests that you had, a lot of the information, but this is going to be in my top 10, no doubt, if not higher.
Sister Nefertari, children of Southampton. She is the reason this happened. Sister Nefertari, our cause, OURKOS.com, OURKOS.com. Give her a thank you, because that's how I found out about Dr. Mutegi. And I guess that would also be an indirect thank you to Irritated Genie, because he is how I found out about Sister Nefertari. So thank you, and thank small little Negro network forming. How about that?
Yeah, these are, yeah.
Hey, Gus.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
What's up? Hello to everybody else. Sky Drifter, I seen your videos too early on when I was looking for counter-racist information, so just wanted to say peace to you. Hey, Gus, I wanted to read this quote I heard a white man say. I found it kind of interesting. He said, I read books. He said, I read any kind of book to develop my command and knowledge of the English language. He said, and then he said, I read books to further my education. So that was his take on reading. And just a regular Englishman. That was his quote, and when I heard that, I was like, wow, the contrast with, But also wanted to say that all the problems that come up, they can be solved. I know somebody called from the Gulf Coast, and he was saying that, wondering like how can that oil spill be cleaned up or whatnot. There's already ways to clean that up. It's just white people aren't willing to do it. So, that's basically where that's where we're at. There's a solution to all of these problems. And if anybody wants to look it up, if they want to find out the solutions to the oil, just look up mycelium fungi, and it's fungi that eats the oil and turns it into energy for itself. So they're just not willing to do it.
If I may intervene, sorry, can I be heard?
Yeah.
There's a video that you could have a look at on YouTube. It's by a gentleman by the name of C.O.W.S, UREUSALL, and he's made a video. I think it's a 5-part series called "Blood of the Earth." He's a white male, and he's actually demonstrated solutions as to how to clear up that oil spill. So there are more than one solution. There is more than one solution in order to deal with that situation. They just don't want to. They just don't want to deal with it. They just don't want to. For reasons I'm not sure of, but they just don't.
Until demonstrated otherwise, I always assume that when harm is done to people who are not white, that it is intentional, not accidental. So, yeah, I'm sure that was addressed in part of the show that I didn't listen to, that I didn't get a chance to hear.
And I wanted to say, too, as far as science goes, you have to look at it as it's cause and effect. So, you know, if you're raising a child or you're a teacher doing homeschooling, and when the child is ready to understand cause and effect, that's when you introduce examples or and whatnot. You know, sand and water. You shake the bottle up, and you watch the different layers of settlement, how it settles. And then if they're interested in it and they have a mind for it, then you just encourage them, and they have to be in a supportive environment. If they're in a supportive environment, you can't stop them from learning. That's the thing. It's not, you don't have to do a lot. You just watch what they're interested in, give them a supportive environment, and they'll take off, man. They'll take off. That's it. But what our children aren't in, they're not in supportive environments. And that's why I brought up the forebrain and the hind brain, That's what people don't understand. It's like, you know, when the hind brain is activated, learning can't happen. You know, it's just that simple. So, you know, our kids are in. I've been in the public school system. I've been in private school system also. But yeah, those environments aren't conducive to learning. So, you know, I was going to ask him about how he felt about homeschooling and whatnot, but that's pretty much the answer. But the adults, they have to.
It seemed like he would.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cree.
I was just going to add that it seemed like he was giving an implicit encouragement to what a lot of people think of as homeschooling. I actually prefer the term unschooling, but when he started talking about how the young people in any given area should have access to a doctor, just regularly doing stuff around them, not just have to have your attempted father being a doctor, but that everybody should have access. When you warehouse younger people in behind walls for most of their day, you're really keeping them from learning most of the time, especially if they're not white. I mean, especially. Because most of the learning, I think the research shows, I can't cite the studies right now, but most of the learning that occurs with kids, it does not occur in school. It may be reinforced in school, but most of the learning is not in school. And so allowing small people to have access to people who are doing things. See, this is I used to be a teacher, just like maybe some of the people on the line. And I think to a large extent it really is true that people who go into teaching are people who generally don't know how to do very much, generally. And, I hate to say that. I come from a long line, but children don't want to be around people who are telling them about things. They want to be around people who are doing things. And so when children are able to just walk around and see somebody in their garage working on something, or see somebody sewing something or doing this on the computer, they learn by being around people who are doing things, and that's what science is. not telling you about what people are doing or what it is, but doing it. And then they can find what they're interested in and pursue that with passion. Their interests lead them somewhere else. But locking them up behind walls, telling them about what's going on, oh my goodness, it's just, it's life-stifling.
Basic programming.
A lot of that homeschooling, or as Cree said, unschooling, however you want to say, it has a lot to do with modeling, and it has to do with adults wanting to be a model, because that's how, like you said, that's how young people learn, by example. You know, that's been proven. That's how they learn. You can't tell them what not to do and stuff like that. That's just not how they process information, depending on how old they are. But we want to get them as young as possible. But, yeah, it's about modeling. So, yeah. But, nobody, I mean, you just have to have adults willing to be models. That's it.
If they're not locked away. If they're not, you know, especially with the males, you know. I mean, I think the last guest that I had really lit a fire under me. This machine of mass incarceration of black males is the key reason, at least in this part of the world, that you don't have black males out there being able to show other young black males how to do things. Because if they're not locked away, then they're impaired when they get released. They're always under systemic control of greater confinement. I think, yeah, I'm going to put a lot of energy into that. That's my next thing.
Is there a website that I can go and forward to individuals that have the videos that were produced by the caller from London?
Yes, if you go to YouTube, the video maker's name is C.O.W.S all, CUREUSALL, and the name of the video series is Blood of the Earth.
I'm sorry, Blood of
the Earth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just a video series that he made shortly after the occurrence of the spill, and there's just so many, you know, different ways to you know, stop or prevent that, you know, oil from coming up. Earlier today, I was watching Sky News, and they were talking about you know, putting sand over the pressure. I mean, as if sand is going to really stop that pressure, you know, from continuously blowing upwards. I just don't see the logic in that. But
oh yeah, I am on YouTube and I see that. But is it you that produced the videos that promote the cows and as well as Cree's show?
Yes. Yeah,
those are the ones I want to see.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
I misheard you. Yeah. Put those videos together.
Are yours on YouTube?
Mine are on YouTube, yes.
And are you? I'm sorry, and maybe this is a dumb question, but are you the Cure-Us-All?
No, sorry. That was in relation to the oil spill. Mm-hmm. Those videos. But if you go to YouTube.com/Skydrifter13.
Okay.
See some of the promotional videos that I've done for Gus and Cree.
Okay, thank you.
That's fine.
But I will check out the oil spill videos as well, because I am in that region. So, yeah, I'll definitely take a look at it. As you can imagine, it's the 24/7 news story here, and for good reason. But it just amazes me that, you know, I keep hearing people here in the Bible, you know, red-blooded Republican, whatever, blame Obama. I mean, it's hilarious and sad at the same time to hear the politics, Democrat versus Republican, and blaming Obama for what's quite obviously something that has everything to do with white people and corporations. I mean, I don't think Obama knows the first thing about drilling oil wells, and neither do I, but it, you know, whatever. I'm sorry. Got off on a tangent.
No, I could only agree with that. Obviously, you know, his superiors, you know, maybe telling him, you know, to say what he needs to say. You know, I can only suspect that that's the case. Again, you know, he has no you know, direct experience from my knowledge of you know, how to deal with oil spills, but I can only agree with you that, you know, those people who are angry at him, you know, it's every reason to be. I guess right now at this period of time, from what I see with what's happening in Arizona, also, I'm sure they've got quite a few reasons to be upset with him at the moment. You know.
You know what I want to ask about? This is, it really is a question. It's not a statement. It's a question, and it's a sincere question, because I really do want to know what people think about this, because I don't have a solidified opinion on this. But Dr. Mutegi said, well, we could have labs ourselves, and they don't have to be really expensive, but basically what I heard him say, if I got it correctly, is that we could get really good science done in labs that are funded by ourselves, and they don't have to be really expensive. Is that really, I mean, are we really in a place where we can compete in science and technology with white people? They have, I mean, to me it seems like they have such a head start. I read in, I think, last month's Scientific American. It was just a little side note on the opening page that I will say white people, but they said we manufacture more magnets than grains of rice are eaten by everyone on planet Earth. Now, when they have that much of a head start, I mean, just like wrap your mind around that they manufacture more magnets than grains of rice that are eaten by all the people who aren't white on the entire planet. How in the world do we catch up to that and compete with that?
Cree, that's a very good... Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's why I was asking him to speak on true learning and conditioning. There is a way to learn, but that's conditioning. But it's not done in the creative brain, in the high brain. So there's a big door, there's a big opening for true technology, not technology that destroys and pollutes, but real technology, real architecture, real engineering, zero-point engineering. So, yeah, it's not about competing with them. There's a big field that's not being tapped that small labs and small groups can go ahead and do the research, because they're not doing it, because they're coming from that hind brain, that brain of anxiety, fear, and we're not dealing with that. So yeah, the door is wide open. The field is wide open.
Okay.
But if I understand your question, Cree, and I think I do, yeah, the field is wide open, but let's be honest about it. I know personally, I don't have enough money to even buy the first thing that would go into a laboratory. And I think Cree's question is a very important one because it's just listening to the different guests on the show. I've even asked the question before of the irritated genie. 10 years from now, where are we? It is almost as if we're at a point now where, and I think that question got answered the other day with the guest. I can't think of his name, but we don't have any. No, it was irritated genie again. We are beyond the point of having anything to defend, and it is about offense at this point, and it could very well be almost too late to play that game as far as catching up is concerned. Does that mean that we shouldn't try? I wouldn't say that we shouldn't, but as Dr. Cambona said in the clip that Gus has played, we got to do some soul searching. I mean, they're not going to give up practicing white supremacy. I think we can safely conclude that. So to get to the point of catching up, that may not even be the game, or I shouldn't say the game, but the approach that has to be taken. After all, they print the money. They control the money. We could go and ask for the money to set up an all-black or African-centered whatever. But even with that, it's like starting at square one, and they're already at square. They're at the end. So
right.
I think I understand the question, and it's a very important one. And I can't say that I have the answer, but I do feel you on that question.
I would only say I'm in agreement with you, sir. But I would only say the first step to that would be organization. Once one would have organization, you would then again, I'm still learning. I don't know much, but I'm only going by what I believe would be the right steps to take. So organization, then having think tanks, and then people that are able to finance those think tanks, and then a creation of that into reality. It is possible, but the economic structure and the planning of thinking in order to create those institutions would be paramount. But I could only agree with what you've just said. Yeah.
And I guess to say one more point to that, I oftentimes think of that very same question, Cree, and I keep coming back to Mr. Fuller's work. It's almost as if, okay, if we set up the think tank, which, I mean, technically speaking, the callers are the think tank. Obviously, we don't know it all, but we are less confused about how this thing is operating. But I keep going back, or keep being drawn back to the work of Mr. Fuller and others in the arena or of the mind state that until this system is undone, and the system of white supremacy is undone, our efforts are, I wouldn't say misplaced, but almost futile, because going back to some of the greatest writers, our ancestors, Dr. Wright, Dr. Bobby Wright, Dr. Amos Wilson, I mean, they've laid the groundwork. I mean, they wrote blueprints. And, yeah, we could follow the blueprint, but short of a complete, I think you know where I'm going with it, build a lab, build a Black Wall Street. It's been done. I mean, we're not talking about things that haven't been done before, but here we are in 2010. I mean, in a world that's overflowing with money, and the black per capita anywhere in the world is next to nil, and it's due wholly in part to the system of white supremacy. So until that is the biggest problem is taken care of, yeah, you're right. We are behind, way behind.
That's persuasive to me. That's persuasive. The jiu-jitsu, they are supreme in the social material system. So the full weight of that power that they have has to be used against them. Since they are everything, then they need to be held. They need to be held responsible for all damage that is done by everybody, including the damage that I do to myself. And so we just have to keep asking for help. And then either, I don't know. Like I said, I started this out by saying I don't know the answer to the question, and I don't. But that was very persuasive to me. And then I hear other people echoing in the back. If we do get to the point where we do what Neely Fuller suggests, which is to push the ultimate confrontation, which is to get rid of white supremacy once and for all, either by replacing it with a system of justice or by getting rid of all the people who aren't white so you can't practice white supremacy. That if we get to that point, I keep hearing the echoes of people who said this earlier in this program, which is, well, they'll just choose to blow up the planet. They're not going to stop practicing white supremacy. If that's the choice, we're all out of here. So both ends strategy, we try. I heard someone talk about 0-point science, and I think I know what you're talking about as far as that. That's a total different modality and paradigm for thinking about science. That is perhaps if we proceed using that method, that will actually transcend the science that they're using, and we can maybe have power that way. So you try both that and try pushing the final confrontation. I don't know. But as far as like just getting in a lab and trying to do what they're doing kind of and sort of differently and with slightly different ideas, or I just can't see how that's going to work. We've got satellites that are light years away. I mean, we don't have a single satellite. We don't even, we can't break the gravitational pull. I mean, I don't see how we do that.
Cree, even if that was to be done, if that were to be done, would you say, in your opinion, would you say that we would have to be, completely secular, to white people? Would we have to, how can I articulate it? But would we have to be non-dependent of them in terms of, not taking any loans from them, not ordering any of the equipment from them? Because my only fear would be some form of sabotage or, some form of hindrance, in trying to thwart, a plan, for a people that only want to. Because again, from my observations, everything that, non-white people have tried to do in order to liberate non-white people, it seems to always be stopped somehow, or I mean, would it have to be, in I can't even go by saying this, but on another planet, or would it have to be done away from any influence of the white, the white man's hand,
5-minute warning. 5-minute warning.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to say yes and say that since we're coming to the end of Gus's show, I'm trying to set up a show to discuss these matters. So I don't have anything scheduled for right now, but I'm trying to set up a show to discuss just these things. And the only way that it can be yes is that white people have to know exactly what we're doing and be incapable of stopping it, even knowing what we're doing. That's the only way that I can see it will work.
Mm-hmm. I would have to agree with that.
Well, I think offense is doing the science. Is setting up the labs in your home. You don't need no bunch of money. All you need is to set up examples of cause and effect and build little engines and stuff like that. So it's very simple. We have to do it anyway, and the system is either gonna survive or it's gonna go down. But it can't go on like this forever. So we're gonna need to know how to rebuild or whatever. So the work has to be done, period. And if, they're going to stop us here, then we rebuild, and that's it. That's all it is. And if we have to do what we have to do, we're going to have to go to them for a lot of things, but that's just the way it is. They're running things. So yeah, it just have to be strategic and on the offense. Be smart.
With the goal in mind that once we have gotten what we believe that we need, you still can't leave the whole system of white supremacy intact, because history has shown us, and it is showing us, that as long as the system is still in place, that once we've gotten the loan, the grant to develop something that's really working to replace their system, they're not going to go for it. So it's almost the ultimate thing that I think nobody really wants to discuss, but it was highlighted by Dr. Cambone and others, which, I got to be honest, I recoiled at the thought. But when you really sit down and think it to its logical conclusion, that as long as you have a group of people who are not interested, show no interest in stopping doing what they are currently doing, they're going to continue to do it until they are stopped.
I agree with that. I kind of, sorry about that. I think that's Gus saying time's up, but yeah, I agree with that, and I think that goes without saying, actually. So.
Which brings us back to organization. Because I would only concur that they're not going to stop doing this. What they're doing, the subjugation that they are blatantly putting us through worldwide. They enjoy doing it. So non-white people would have to have an organized, strategic. That's the first thing, organization. Understanding, of what's happening and building an organization around it.
Yeah. I think that's an excellent note to end on. I would let the conversation go for the remaining 20, but as I said, I have things to do, miles to go before I get to rest on this here plantation, and we'll be back tomorrow, so you won't have to wait that long. If you find this program and this dialogue constructive, same time tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 12 noon Pacific, and London listeners, 8 p.m. your time. He is the author of Cost of Privilege. Full title, The Cost of Privilege, Taking on the System of White Supremacy and Racism. Should be interesting. Looking forward to it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into the broadcast. I hope it has been a constructive investment of your time and energy. Please support Cree's blog, cree7.wordpress.com. Again, cree7.wordpress.com. And support Back of the Bus's blog as well, nonwhitealliance.wordpress.com. Again, nonwhitealliance.wordpress.com. Folks, if you tune into the broadcast, got to have your thinking cap on at the because you will hear guests contradict one another. I believe a non-white person was on the program and said that black people can do anything that they want. A white person, suspected racist, said the exact opposite, said that that is not true and that that should not be said to any black person as long as the system of white supremacy exists, because you cannot do anything you want. That's what white supremacy means. So you're going to have to think about that and come to your own conclusion. That those individuals cannot be correct. Somebody's got to be accurate. Somebody's got to be wrong on that one. So think about it. What does the system of white supremacy mean? And come to your own conclusions. Again, we don't have guests that contradict themselves here on the couch just trying to get information. Think. Use your brain. Come to your own conclusions. Gus, I'm a victim too. I'm ignorant too. So I might not even be saying the correct thing. So think for yourself. Come to your own conclusions and act on your own logic. Yeah, we'll end there. We'll be back, as I said, tomorrow, same time. Chip Smith, the be constructive. Thank you, Sky Drifter. First time to actually talk to him, and appreciate promoting this program, Cree's program. Hope it's been constructive, and I look forward to definitely Saturday have me on the program. If you have time, please call tomorrow. A pleasure to have folks call in and share their perspective. I'm glad you were able to participate on the program today, sir.
I can only share those sentiments with you, Gus. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you for called in as well. We will be back. Be as safe as possible. White people permitting, we will be back. That's Back of the Bus's phrase. White people permitting, we will be back same time tomorrow, Chip Smith. Thank you all. Replace white supremacy as soon as possible. Cows signing out.